is an amateur game. I mean, the professional side of it, there are idols and heroes and fun to watch them play. But I mean, if it wasn't for amateur golf, there would be no golf.
You have to remember, when you play a golf course and you're out there for 4 hours or whatever, you're only hitting a ball for 15 minutes of that. So there's a lot of time to look around.
Hello and welcome to an episode of the Top 100 Clubhouse podcast. I'm James Henderson, your host, and I'm here with a pretty famous figure in the coaching world of golf, in Cameron McCormick. How you doing, Cameron?
I'm doing good, James. I think that the fame would be an overstatement. I'm just one small piece of the chessboard in the world of golf.
Well,
and I way prefer to sit in the back. And I think that I'm well quoted as feeling like I would have a better relationship with anonymity than being exposed on the front end. So anyway.
Well, you've now had, you've coached Jordan Spieth since he was an absolute child. Was it 12 when he joined you, or what? How old was he?
just shy of his 13th birthday. I think we were about 3 weeks removed, or prior to his 13th birthday. He showed up at a studio that I was working at, a golf club that I was working at in Dallas, Texas.
And you've also done 5 women's major champions. Is that right? Something like that, 5?
Yes. Most recently, Yuka Sasso last year, Women's Open. Prior to that, Celine Boutier, Evian. Prior to that, I'm forgetting the order here, but So Yeon Yu at now the Chevron, what was then Kraft Nabisco, or maybe there was a sponsor in between there. But it was A&A, a women's A&A. And then in and around that same time frame, IK Kim at the Women's Open and Anna Nordqvist at the Evian.
That's incredible. And then you also have 3 other US junior amateurs that have come through your ranks.
Yeah, Will Zalatoris, Philip Barbary, and Noah Goodwin, all of which have kicked on to play at various levels. One of those names we certainly know, Will Zalatoris, who's won on the PGA Tour, and Noah Goodwin, who's now a PGA Tour member, and Philip Barbary, who continues to chase professional golf in hopes that he also reaches the top of the top.
That's a crazy number. That's a lot.
I've been blessed, and generally how it works when you do what I do is all starts with one, and then it cascades based on that one player's success into more opportunities with similar skill levels and similar demographics. So you get one really good junior who excels, and then other juniors come in based on that word of mouth or based on those results. And then as that person scales up further ladders and you get more exposure, whether through that person or through the writing or the media that you do, and then other players come from little different demographics within the game, whether they be the college players or the professional players from both the male and female side.
Right, we'll get into what it's like coaching the elite in a bit, but I'd like to start off by telling your story. So where did golf start for you? Where did you first fall in love with golf?
Well, my first start with golf, I didn't exactly fall in love with it. In fact, I think it wouldn't be wrong to say that my words were I hated it. And that was when my Christmas family vacation involved playing golf with my dad and my uncle. My dad was an Aussie Rules football player professionally back when he was a young guy. And my uncle was an avid golfer of fairly low single-digit player. And I was probably 8 or 9 years old, dragged to the golf course when really my interests were football and tennis as a young Aussie growing up in country Victoria and then Melbourne. And then probably around age 15 years old, I was brought back to the game based on my football. I could see that I wasn't going to go anywhere inside of Aussie Rules football because I wasn't physically developing as fast as the other people around me. And so therefore I had some time on my hands as I phased out of football and I started back into golf. And that's really where I fell in love with it in that first kind of 4 to 5 months back, because I had some skills from other sports, from football, from playing tennis, from playing cricket, that seemingly dovetailed really nicely into some pretty quick development inside of golf. My first handicap was 10. I got down to 4 really quick in probably the first 6 months, just based on hand-eye coordination that I borrowed from those other sporting endeavors. And then that turned into me, because of that early success, being more interested in applying more time to it and getting good. And that getting good involved me graduating high school at 17 years old and coming to college in America. Prior to that, I caddied on the Australasian PGA Tour as a kind of summertime gig, a little side hustle. And the person that I caddied for was fresh out of college in the United States and said, "Hey, these are the opportunities that present themselves inside the game of golf in America." This was pre-internet days, and so my only knowledge of what existed in America was what I could find in golf magazines. And he said, "You can go to college and get an education," which I was all about, "and you can also play golf on scholarship and further your golf career, I guess, and chase your goals." And so that's what I was all about. And so I came over and went to college, and then ultimately got out of college in 1997, and I turned pro and tried to chase it for 2.5, 3 years, and didn't have much success. And that's when I turned to coaching, because at the same time as trying to develop my golf skills, I also, as you do, is you learn to take lessons from those around you, be they formal coaches or be they players that you're talking with and chatting on what they're doing in their game to improve X, Y, or Z skill. And you also coach yourself, as you very well know, because we all have our own fields and ways to solve particular problems. And so I think that's where I'm like, well, I've got these skills that I've learned as a player. I wonder how they translate into coaching, and then I get to stay inside of golf. So that's a fairly short version of a long story, clearly, but then tells the tale of a player who didn't love golf, loved golf, got really good, but not good enough to achieve their goals. And so then they translated that into coaching.
So when you decided coaching was your next career path, how did you go around thinking, where did you learn these lessons? It's not like there's plenty of books out there, say it be Ben Hogan's book or whatever on the mechanics of the swing, but who kind of did you go to speak to learn the secrets of the trade that you wouldn't get in those?
Yeah, as I reflect back, I think one of my most primary influences was a gentleman named Gary Nicholas, who was a local pro at a club back in Australia, and he gave me my really first formal lesson. And then after that, my time in the United States was exposed to coaches like Dana Ballinger, who was a local pro of good reputation here in the state of Texas and the surrounding states, who coached a bunch of college players. Clearly, my college coaches, my first coach in Kansas, and then my second coach at Texas Tech, would provide wisdom and mentorship along the way, but nothing technical. And then exposure to Randy Smith and the Hank Haney coaches, who were local facilities here in Dallas, Texas. So there were many influences along the way. The one thread around these influences in my early coaching experience, in terms of being a receiver of it, was each person has their own style of communication, their own philosophical bent in terms of what they would prefer to see in motions. And most of the time, those things I filtered over time as ways that they would solve a problem, far more than they were probably a methodology that they 100% believed in. Now, it could have been a bit of both, probably, as I think through it. But yeah, what differentiated them mostly was their styles of communication and the way they would go about trying to get me, being the player, to do certain things. And so there were those personal influences of coaches that I was exposed to, but there were just as much the research that I would do, whether it be Golf Magazine or watching golf on TV or filming PGA Tour broadcast, LPGA Tour broadcast, and using old VHS tape and slowing things down and analyzing it myself, even as a player. And then further to that, I had a camcorder, a video camera where I would film myself. And so I was definitely influenced in those early years of trying to play at an elite level from a technical standpoint by many sources, but just as much what I could figure out myself would work for me. And that was good as a base of knowledge. But very quickly, when I started to use that base of knowledge that was very personal to me to coach others, I found myself falling short of being useful to everyone. Meaning, I started coaching as I learned to um, develop my own game, very stylistically, very preference based, very, I know when I position the club here with this feel, position my body here with this feel, that it typically produces this result for me. But it doesn't necessarily going to mean that's the right thing for a different person standing in front of me that I'm coaching. And so, probably 2 years into coaching at Dallas Country Club here in Dallas, Texas, I was falling short of having the results that I was wanting and expecting, and people were expecting of me, meaning lowering handicaps and hitting better shots. And there was one particular time where a person came back in for, must have been the sixth or seventh lesson, and expressed extreme disappointment to the extent they said, I keep coming back in here for lessons and you keep telling me something different. And it's like, you're telling me what you've recently read or seen read in Golf Magazine or seen on Golf Broadcast. And it was essentially valid that this person was calling me out as a rookie coach that lacked well-formulated roadmap of how to get this player from X to Y. And then at that same time, I was presented an idea and that idea came from my wife, that for my 30th birthday, she wrote to some of the top coaches in the world, some of the top players in the world, and received responses from them. I said, well, gosh. And this was just for a birthday wish for a person that was turning 30. And I said, well, if she can do that and get just a birthday wish, I wonder if I can reach out to these people and ask to watch them sit at the foot of the master, so to speak, of the world's best coaches and learn from them. And so I did just that over the next 12 to 18 months. I spent whatever time I could traveling throughout America. And again, I was working full time at the same time. So it was like one day here or there, and visiting with people like David Ledbetter, like Hank Haney, like Butch Harmon, like Chuck Cook, and the list goes on. And I think now, and I've expressed this many times, how gracious I was that these people invited me in and allowed me to be a fly on the wall to learn what they taught it and how they taught it to the people that were teaching it to. And those are the three kind of aspects, right? It's like, what I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, and why am I going to say it for this unique person standing in front of me with this different goal orientation than maybe the next person that's going to follow them in the door. And that's what it is to be a coach. It's to be kind of a conduit, a person that understands what a person wants, understands where a person is, understand how to relate to this person with each different student's capabilities. And those capabilities are just as much what they're able to do with their body and club and their mind as much as their time, and then builds a bridge to get there. So again, that's long-winded.
Yeah, but it's the difference between one size fits all and being a problem-solving coach, right?
Yeah, indeed. And that's one of the tenets that I've written down, I've designed into the academy that I run right now, is these core tenets. And one of those tenets is one size does not fit all. In fact, there is no one size fits all. It's a unique approach that is bespoke to the individual that's standing in front of you.
That's something I do want to get onto, because when you're coaching someone, say, okay, we'll just use Jordan as an example, but Jordan does have a unique swing compared to a lot of the pro golfers. But when someone comes in with a unique swing that works, how do you then use your knowledge base with something that unique to then further develop them into a better player?
Yeah, each person's swing is unique, and Jordan's no less unique than many others that play on the PGA and LPGA Tour. But what is unique about Jordan's is the same uniqueness about anyone else's, is that what are the facets that make it unique, the pieces, and understanding how those pieces fit together. And in fitting them together, let's get to the crux or the core of the situation as a coach, as I look at it, and as a player needs to look at it as well. And that's being ball backwards rather than form forwards. So to say that a person is form forwards is to say how I started as a coach. When I was teaching myself, when I was coaching in those early years, I was looking at a player's movement and prescribing change with the expectation that the ball flight would change. Now, there's a line of logic that agrees with that. But a much better line of logic that I developed in the subsequent years that I still, well, rather than say still, that I've adhered to over the course of the last 20 years, maybe 25 years, is ball backwards coaching, meaning understand how a person wants to see the ball fly in the air or move along the ground, understanding what instructions the club needs to provide to the ball to achieve that goal, whether it's a high, low, turning to the left or turning to the right, and where they expect it to start. And then working backwards from there into what techniques they're using to accomplish that goal. So it's ball backwards rather than form forwards. And then underpinning that philosophy is a philosophy that says, okay, what's the easiest path for this player that's standing in front of me to accomplish the change they're looking for? Like, so with the assumption that a person's trying to hit a draw, okay, we need a close face to path. We need an alignment that fits with a launch direction that allows for an amount of curve. So let's say a person's curving at 30 feet right to left in the air. So a fairly middle kind of range draw. Well, they need at least 30 feet of space to cause that ball to launch off target, to turn back to target, whether that target is middle of the green or flag or middle of the fairway. And so there's a alignment that fits for that. It could be on target, it could be left of target like Lee Trevino, it could be right of target like Lee Trevino. And how all of these pieces fit together to allow the success of the flight, where it's launching and where it's ending up, then is underpinned by this philosophy of, can we keep it as simple as possible, such that those idiosyncrasies that might be in a player's movement are allowed to flourish, are allowed to actually still be part of a person's, we'll call it a sacred DNA, how their brain thinks and how their body feels in movement. And I'm a coach that prefers to measure twice, cut once. I'm very methodical in terms of how I go about this and leave more than I take. And what I mean by that is that those idiosyncrasies that a player shows up with are likely still to be a part of their swing for years and years and years. But yet what should have changed is that player's ability to take those idiosyncrasies and produce the desired outcome, whatever that outcome is. But in this case, we're talking about that 30-foot draw, right? So trying to change a person's swing DNA is like trying to push rope uphill. It's a difficult task, and oftentimes it's a fool's errand. Rather, following the current downstream is to embrace a person's unique capabilities and build that custom solution that we talked about before when I used that word bespoke, very English word, right? So yeah, does that answer your question?
It very much does. It very much does. And just touching on something we did spoke about earlier, and just talking about the idiosyncrasies of the swing. You talked about other sports giving you the ability to play golf at a better level at a starting when you started. What sports would you say have the best translation into golf and offer you? So things like a draw flight path might be something to do with a decent tennis overhand, you know?
Yeah, sure. I think there's a lot of sports that can relate, or that a person can borrow, translate those skills from those sports into golf. For me, probably the biggest impact was tennis, because of the stroke pattern, the racket, so the extension of the body, the hand-eye coordination that develops from that, hitting both sides and hitting both spins, top spin and also the slice spin, and awareness of face to path. But just as much, I didn't competitively play table tennis, but ping pong or table tennis was very good for the speed of hand-eye coordination, and also using that same understanding of the face, its location in space relative to where the ball needs to launch is a big determinant of where it will launch. And then the spin, the associated difference between the direction of that paddle's movement. Cricket was also big, but just as much the sports that didn't involve me handling an implement, meaning a tennis racket or a cricket bat or a ping pong paddle. The track and field that I did growing up as a young kid also were impactful to the extent that I learned to use my body in a certain way. So I don't know that there's necessarily a way to design a best program of other sports that complement golf really well. But I know that without that solid base that starts with the fundamental movement skills, as they're called, and then expands into specialized sports skills. So fundamental movement skills can be considered walking, running, sprinting, jumping, skipping, and there's a few others that would then fit into that grouping. And then how to use those skills inside of a sport to demonstrate some pretty advanced type of body control. The disassociation of spinning the hips while the trunk is moving in a different direction would be a good example of one of those. But yeah, to build a base as a young person was super important. And so therefore it becomes a really important piece of advice as I'm coaching parents to create this roadmap of developmental steps for, we'll call it a 6 to 10-year-old. But then at the same time, golf itself is always being considered a late specialization sport. Whereas if you think about the opposite, what are early specialization sports? And you go to the Olympic sports, and particularly on the female side, given their accelerated biological development, then gymnastics comes to mind. You've got adolescents, 12, 13, 14 years old, as world best gymnasts in the Olympics. And I think about golf, yes, historically, late specialization, very few 16, 17, 18-year-olds are equipped to perform on the world stage at a professional level, but it's being pushed further and further towards it being an early specialization sport. And there are a couple of, I think, drivers of that. One is as one person does it, others consider themselves as possible candidates to do that. I mean, I remember back, I was in college and Ty Tryon is a 16-year-old. Now, he flamed out for a variety of different reasons in all likelihood, but he was a prominent player at 16 years old, competing in PGA Tour events and competing really well. Matteo Mancero finishing top 10 the Open Championship at Turnberry, I think it was, as a 16-year-old. So there are examples of players that have kicked on who have done similar things. My guy, Jordan Spieth, at 16, finishing 16th in the Byron Nelson, and then ultimately being the youngest winner on the PGA Tour after he turned pro since the 30s. So that's one of those forces. If one person does it, then others think that they can follow, and there's truth to that. I think that one of the forces in America that drives the need to specialize a bit earlier is the need to exemplify yourself as good, to expose yourself to college coaches and to get that scholarship. And particularly with the limited roster spots that are now being introduced with the changes in NCAA regulations over here, there's a need as a 13, 14, 15-year-old to be the best.
Yeah.
And so while you've got examples like Paul Azinger or Patrick Harrington, and there's a few others that are even current playing on the PGA Tour that were not the early rise, but they were the late rise. Those are the late bloomers. Those are the kids that need to show some amazing grit and tenacity and also tolerance or acceptance that they're not going to play in the best events against the best players at the best schools. If we're talking about playing in America, that they're going to have to go to a tier 2 or tier 3 school and continue to cultivate their game. So yeah, again, I digressed a little bit. Golf and golf performance at a higher level, whether we're talking about professional level or just really good amateur golf, your aspirations to be good at it in your club championship at some point in the future, then exposure to lots of different sports starting out is super beneficial. And then just because golf seems like it's moving in a direction where you'll have far greater number of players that specialize early and are elite early, doesn't mean that, given that you can play golf and excel at golf into your late 30s and middle 40s, that if you get good as late as 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, then it's not beyond you to play at an elite level.
Yeah, very much so. Well, you still see guys who never really played played any level of PGA or European doing well in the senior stuff. So though you don't have to, yeah, we'll come back to that. But I do find it fascinating. You've obviously coached a number of people from a young age to become elite level. When these kids show up to get taught by you, and even when Jordan turned up on the first day, what do you see in these kids? Or are they just like every other child? Or do you know these guys are going to be the ones that make it?
Yeah. So it's a perspective that I can offer some wisdom to based on my experience. And in my experience, the kids that have shown up that have then kicked on, boys and girls, very few of them have shown up to my door on day one of golf, right? So I'm not getting them with no golf skill or no golf experience formed, essentially to use the expression, just out of the womb. So the kids that have won the US Juniors or gone on to become elite level college players and possibly professionals, when they've come to me, they've already had some level of golf skills developed. That could be they're shooting around par at 12 years old, or that could be they're shooting around 80 at 12, 13 years old. And so if we can just set their current skill level to the side, because it can be that range, right? What really separates the kids that then kick on from the kids that kind of just don't, or they kick on at a less accelerated velocity and don't reach the peak, let's say, is the willingness to do the hard work and the ownership of that. And so we could call the willingness to do the hard work how large a fire they have burning. Like, are they doing this because, and Jordan mentioned this a few weeks back as he was here for a session at Trinity Forest. He's looking at kids out there and he's like, who's crazy? And what he meant by is who's willing to work harder for longer out of that group of kids than anyone else. And basically what he was asking is who's like me? Who's like me in that group of 14-year-olds out in the range that wants it so bad they'll do whatever it takes. So that's trait one. Do you want it so bad that you'll do whatever it takes? Because getting really good at something, anything in life, is about wanting it really bad and having a willingness to do things that others won't. And that list of things that others won't do is an exhaustive list. It's a long list. And then the other side of that is like how quickly a kid starts to develop the knowledge that they can use on their own. Because as a coach, you're around someone 1, 2, 3 hours a week, sometimes more than that when you're part of like a developmental program at a club like we have here. So if you're around coach a limited time frame, we'll call it 10% of your actual time that you're investing into golf, then what really is going to drive the old 80-20 rule, the 80% of your results, is how well you can coach yourself and the things that you're doing as you're trying to develop your own game outside of that time with coach. And so a big part of what we do, what I do myself, and what we do therefore here at Altus, which is my teaching academy, is we teach kids to be their own best coach. And we teach parents, in many ways, we deputize the parents to also be great coaches, such that they can be our voices, meaning the coach's voice, outside of our presence. So it's like, are you willing to do the hard things that no one else will do? And can you be your own best coach, knowing how to read the feedback in flight, how to read the feedback in contact, and knowing how to architect the things that you do in practice, kind of design your practice program, such that when you show up to your next coaching session, the first thing that comes out of coach's mouth is, oh my gosh, you got it. Now we get to move on. So those were the couple of things that I would kind of give you that separated, no matter what the starting point of the player standing in front of me was, the kids that kicked on at whatever level, whether they ended up winning majors or college championships or high school championships, did more so than the kids that didn't.
it's ability to learn and react while while being able to understand your lessons and do it themselves. That's amazing. That's really cool. Rather than needing you to tell them to do things all the time.
Yeah, again, going back to one comment I made earlier, the core tenets of that differentiate my coaching from where it was way back in the day, and therefore the Altus coaching that we teach our coaches here is that we try to build self-sufficiency into the players that we coach, whether they be recreational amateurs. Having known problems, we know what goes bad when it goes bad, and we have a known solution or a secondary solution, a plan A and a plan B. And if plan A doesn't work, plan B surely will work. And if plan B doesn't work, then clearly we're trying to solve the wrong problem here. And generally, that cycle for players running that feedback loop themselves in their own practice and also their own play, they'll be able to right the ship and start hitting better shots and playing better golf without the need for a emergency call to coach.
Yeah, sending over a video of your swing.
Yeah. Not that doesn't happen, just to confirm.
How it would be rude of me to ask, but also I have to ask about the tenants. You have, how many tenants do you have?
There are 10 that are written down. Don't ask me to quote all of them right now. I don't want to waste time.
What's your favorite ones? What's the ones that you think are most important?
The one that's most important for me as a coach is leave no stone unturned. And that's who I was as a kid growing up in Melbourne, Australia. How I showed up to the classroom, eyes open, ears open, mouth closed. I've always been that type of person. I mean, if I'm on the road and my fellow coaches see me, I'm typically sitting by myself, reading and researching something or watching golf with my thinking cap on. So I don't do a whole lot of talking. And that's me embodying that leave no stone unturned. It's a blessing and a curse. There's two sides to that blade, so to speak. There's the curse side, I should say. The curse side is probably that at times it gets me thinking that I can do a better job than I currently am. And the curse of that is the possibility that I shift to overcoaching. And so the reminder that I have for myself is, does what the player have, whether I'm prepping someone for a major championship, as happened last week, or as I'm in session with a player, have I said enough? And oftentimes the answer that I give myself is yes. And so then I'll just sit back and start to say very little. And when that happens, I need to remind myself that I'm doing the right thing versus, okay, there's better here. Because I'm greedy as a coach. I see this hierarchy of development this player's on, and I want to take more steps than maybe that I feel like they need. And so you're wearing two hats at one time. You got this kind of long-term view, and you got this short-term perspective. So that leave no stone unturned is the tenet that I feel like I am appreciating the most. Another tenet that I love inside of Altus is no one's more important than the tribe, because I understand, similar to Rory McIlroy winning last week, that he is an individual that is the sum of many, many parts. The part that came from his parents, the part that came from the community at Hollywood Golf Club, of which Harry Diamond was an important part of that community, as were many others. The part that came from golf in his home country and the union of golf in his home country and the events that he played in, and his peer group, right? So appreciating that we as a group of coaches here at Altus try and put other pieces around these players to support them and challenge them is a pretty critical tenet as well. And so for anyone out there involved in coaching or involved in running a club, yes, it's true that your juniors are the future of your club, and fostering that like-minded tribe of kids that love golf, of kids that whether they want to get better and become elite or whether they just want to get better to enjoy it more, is putting them inside the right group and having them practice and play together is likely the most critical aspect of the early development stages of golf experience.
It, yeah, I get, yeah, very much so. The support network that they have and the experience they get, that's to make sure it's positive and not a negative experience across their time playing. It must be very, very important in the enjoyment and how much work you put in.
Yeah, yeah. The work scales with that enjoyment, with that success, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if something's difficult for someone, they're less likely to work at it. If they work at it less, they're less likely to do it. And then the inverse is true. And the inverse is um, that algorithm we try and refine.
Okay, so what was it like? I'd like to get on to a little bit about Jordan Spieth because I know my listeners will be annoyed if I don't ask. What it was like when Jordan turned up and his development, because it seemed to be very quick. He was obviously a star at a young age. Um, what was it like as the coach? Did you feel, how excited were you?
I was coaching at the time a couple of players that played in the Corn Ferry Tour. So Jordan wasn't the best player that I'd seen on day one, where they were the first time I saw him, or the second time I saw him. But he was very good as a 12, 13-year-old. How good was he? 2 weeks prior to us meeting, he'd shot 63 in a tournament, 8 under par in one round of golf. And that was a 3-round tournament. And he won the tournament by 18 shots. So he was very good for his age. How good was he prior to that, though, is also another question. Because if I just leave it at that, then someone thinks, oh, well, Jordan's just like, he was God gifted.
Yeah.
2 years prior to meeting me, when he was involved in baseball and a little bit of football and track and swimming at his local club, 2 years prior to that, he was shooting 90s. And so, yeah, he got good as success came and he scaled his, let's say, time investment in golf. And then he got even better as he was involved in some coaching, whether that was his own coaching or the high volume playing that he did or the junior program that he was involved in at his local club. But then he got much better as he got that customized coaching that he received from me. So day one, he demonstrated that wisdom beyond his years as he sat in front of me and said, here's where I'm at and here's what I want to get to. Where he was at was just a fairly, for a 12-year-old, a really practical, objective perspective on where his game was at, his strengths and weaknesses. And where he wanted to get to is he literally sat there and said, I want to win the Masters. And I didn't gulp out loud, but I'm like, wow, that's a bold objective for a 12-year-old to express to a coach. Like I said, I was coaching professional golfers at the time, as well as some really good juniors. And so I thought of Jordan as just another one of those kids that had high aspirations, an intensity and a wisdom beyond his years to maybe work at it and see himself achieving that. But what really transpired in the first few months of work with him was, oh, wow, he's highly skilled. When, as a coach, you take someone on the golf course and you put them in situations where you're like, okay, I'm going to expose weakness here. And those weaknesses aren't exposed to flight a shot low, flight a shot high, hit amazing short game shots from short side of bunkers or deep rough. It's like, wow, this kid's got a skill set that's professional like at then 13 years old. This is like 6 months after we met. And then one thing that stands out about Jordan in the early months that continued to unfold year after year after year was as he stepped into a deeper talent pool, deeper waters, so to speak. So leveled up the stage of competition from local Northern Texas PGA events into regional type events, into national AJGA events, and then ultimately into professional events as a 15, 16-year-old, was he was never outside of his depth. He always leveled up and wasn't scared by the stage. And that wasn't coached at all, or at least it wasn't coached explicitly by me, other than maybe one occasion where we had a conversation about it, which we don't need to get into. So that's something that is either a function of his genetic makeup or a function of his learned self-belief, and likely a combination of both of those things. So coming from mom and dad, and coming from what he was exposing himself to, and the self-talk that he learned as a 12 to 16-year-old, the attitude of, I can do it. Yes, it feels difficult. Yes, I'm nervous. But at the end of the day, if I don't believe in myself, there's a good chance I get less out of myself. There's a good chance I trip and fall, when in reality, it's just golf. It's golf as if it was me playing at my local club. It's golf as if it was me playing with my buddies. And so that was very unique, and one of those traits that he showed year after year after year, that he could level up as the stage was higher, so to speak. So he turned pro and played a number of events in 2013 on both the mini tour, so what is now the Corn Ferry Tour, as well as exemptions into PGA Tour events. And then eventually he graduated based on the earnings and the limited number of PGA Tour starts that he got. And then ultimately he won his first PGA Tour event, his first professional event at John Deere.
He won it the week before the Open and got into the Open.
Correct. And
at Muirfield.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was it. So you obviously have this rising star who everyone's talking about. You're training him, teaching him everything, and getting him ready for these tournaments. How different is it in preparation for something like a Muirfield? He's probably not played many golf courses like that in the world, or a normal PGA Tour event. What was the step up for Jordan and the realization of the difference of these golf courses?
Oh gosh, he is, again, this is a trait that is more unique to him than most, and which is why he was so accelerated in terms of his success. He's extremely smart, book smart, just as well as street smart. So how does street smarts play out? As they relate to a golf course, is how quickly you can learn the change in turf type, the challenge of different winds in different parts of the world. And so that would be how a person feels the wind is affecting their ball as a function of, let's say, heaviness of the wind, so the moisture in the wind changing moment to moment, the sand type, the grass type on greens, the firmness of greens. He's always been very quick at being able to take many, many data points that relate to the challenge of a golf course and synthesizing them into, this is how this golf course is going to play different the next week. And then as he's synthesizing those things, he's then practicing on Mondays and Tuesdays and Wednesdays to audition his skills to prep and peak for Thursday through Sunday. One of the learning curves on playing PGA Tour, LPGA Tour golf, or any professional golf, even college golf for that matter, is how quickly can you learn a new golf course? And those are the underlying principles that then support his early success in professional golf, as well as the immense level of skill that he has and had back then. It's a challenge even for recreational players that show up to the same golf course that they're playing, but yet the conditions have changed based on changes in maintenance practices. All right, so we top dress greens today. We get a little sand coating on them. How's that going to play different? And so there's some street smarts that goes into that. The how is you build up this library of experience, and that library of experience starts day one, asking yourself the question, I wonder why the ball's reacting in this way on this type of turf. And then it sits in the back of your mind in that library of experience that becomes that data point that you recall the next time you face that situation. It's not true that Muirfield was his first links experience in the UK, because he did go to the Walker Cup. It was Royal Aberdeen.
Yeah.
A year prior to that. And then on that trip, they played plenty of courses throughout Scotland before going up north. And he also had the benefit of growing at a place where wind was a daily occurrence. I mean, here in Dallas, Texas, and all over Texas for that matter, the days that you have an absence of wind, like might exist in many places in America, are only days in between the fronts. We got a front coming down from the north, the center of the country, that's blowing wind out of the north, and then there's going to be this push from the Gulf of Mexico, and then there's this little lull period. It's about a 12-hour period. Hopefully you catch it in daylight where there's going to be no wind, and then all of a sudden the wind's coming out of the south, or it's coming out of the southwest, or it's coming out of the northwest. So a day without wind in Texas is a really rare day, and I think that was one of the blessings that helped him and helps all kids that play in wind transfer those skills and translate those skills to better performance sooner all around the world.
Well, he obviously translated it winning at Birkdale, so he knows what he's doing.
Yes.
So he's won, what, 3 majors? He's only a PGA away, of doing... Imagine, oh God, that'd be cool if you won the PGA this year and you had 2 people doing career slams in 1 year. That'd be a pretty special.
Yes, that would be special. If you can aid and about that in any way with some prayers or some requests to the golf gods, that would be appreciated. Prayer too. Let's start to vibe up.
Well, I'll start getting people around and we'll do some sort of dance. So the one thing I do need to ask about as a coach, because it's as much as it's probably not to say that it'd be easy for you, but it's probably easier when your player's on fire, when he's playing well and everything's going right.
Sure, that's some easier coaching, yeah.
But when Jordan had his issues at the Masters and kind of dropped away, he looked so good that year, and then that water on 12 just upturned him. Mm-hmm. What was that like as a coach, watching that and then having to think about solutions or finding discussion points to be able to take that on?
Yeah, one of the pleasures of coaching players that are doing difficult things at a world-class level, I mean, they're the tip of the spear, right? Is that you are challenged, and what's demanded of you as a coach is to continue to learn. And I've always used the metaphor of, as a coach, I feel like I'm riding this wave, and the player is the wave, and they're pushing to shore, if you will. And you need to stay as best as possible ahead of that wave so you continue to ride it. And that meant to me, all the while, as my players around me are improving and doing amazing things, achievements, is that I needed to learn things in areas. So in this case, we could call it sports psychology, right? That help them in advance of actually needing those skills. And so, yeah, it's nice when your players firing on all cylinders and achieving success, but that's the 10% of the time. The 90% of the time is I'm not quite there. And maybe the other side of that is the 10% of the time, that's part of that 90% of the time, is I'm not even close. And Adam Scott said it to me in a podcast that we did a few years back. He says, there are kind of 3 states that I go through. I have a complete idea of what I'm doing, how I'm doing it. And that's when you know that I'm a dangerous competitor, when I'm going to be close to the lead, if not winning golf tournaments. Then I have some idea, and that happens most of the time. And I'm a decent professional at that point. I'm going to make cuts and maybe push myself into condition. And then sometimes I have no idea. And so players are cycling through these 3 stages for a variety of different reasons. But getting back to your question, when a player is facing challenges as a coach, you need to tap into a set of skills that aren't the X's and O's of movement, unless those challenges are directly related to the X's and O's of how a player is moving their body and their club. But just as much, sometimes the challenges are psychological, sometimes because of life events, and sometimes because of the events that happen inside of competition, where your results are affecting how you see yourself in the world personally. and Rory's done a great job over the last many years of disassociating himself as a golfer from himself as a person, and being very process driven, far more than outcome driven. It's a lesson that we can all learn. And so, specific to that that time period back in 2016, when Jordan suffered that, what he termed, and someone would use his term, collapse at Augusta, which has been called that evidently and legitimately so. Yeah, it happened because of a series of poor shots. But there are two learnings that come out of that. The learning that is, yes, you can fold, but how quickly do you pick yourself up? Get knocked down 7 times, get up 8. And on that next tee on 13, he got up at the eighth time, and he played those final series of holes in 2 under par, when many mere mortals would have continued to crumble, and it would have been a different outcome other than finishing second in that tournament. So he immediately bounced back, which showed that resilience and tenacity in the moment when a person experienced could it be considered one of the lowest moments of a person's career? For sure, could be. But then also there's the opportunity that exists post the event. And this is after the tournament that we did a lot of thought and reflection over. There's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, but also in the psychological world, there's this philosophy and strategies to encourage post-traumatic growth, and that's what we tried to do. We tried to talk through how do we turn this into a growth opportunity, and that's essentially what it became. In a matter of months after that, he won at Colonial, and that's a testament to, again, that inside the arena, his bounce back ability, that tenacity, but just as much after that, can he separate himself from that trauma that he went through and still believe that there's greatness inside of him and not be defined by it, but rather recover from it and bounce back from it. And there's nothing specific that I would necessarily point to that said, well, this is the reason why he was able to turn that into a growth opportunity, other than to have sounding boards that were people to talk through this with. And also the appropriate self-talk or dialogue that was going on internally, that everything's going to be okay. I mean, to that point, it's nice to be able to reflect on your career and say, I've won a major championship, right? No, I've won 2 major championships at that point. And so it's like it was the only opportunity that you had and you didn't succeed. And so we're literally less than a year removed from his US Open win at Chambers Bay at that point in time. And so not too far in the rearview mirror was this, no, I can still succeed at this. And yes, the more chances I give myself, I'm invariably going to trip and fall. And then you learn that other people did this. This is not just unique to you. Greg Norman did this, Nick Faldo, Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer had these same instances. And it was instance after instance where I was one of the people that said, look, here's what happened to player X in this event back in this year. It feels like what happened to you, right? And then, yeah, there was a nodding head moment, like, yeah, I get it. It's going to happen. The closer you get to the fire, the more likely you are to get burned as you try and warm yourself up, right? So, yeah, there was a good growth opportunity that came from it.
I remember when my father passed away, someone turned to me, and I was quite upset, obviously very upset at the time, and someone turned to me and said, when you have something traumatic happen to you, there's 3 things that can happen to you. You can either be engulfed by it, you can let it define you, or you can learn and grow from it. And I thought that's very similar to what you're saying there. Just something that, yeah, that just struck very true to me, like something that I understand. Very interesting. Fascinating, and I'm sure there's plenty more questions we can have on that. I don't want to hold you back too long. I know you still teach a huge amount of hours throughout the year. So I'm just going to put in for the final question, I'm going to ask you what's your 5 favorite golf courses, the ones that mean the most to you. It doesn't have to be the best. It could be the ones that just mean something to you.
Yeah. it's hard for me to order them.
You don't have to order them. I've had someone say 13 before, so don't worry.
One of my favorite experiences in my time playing golf was a an afternoon evening of golf that I share with my son at Royal Dornoch, where we showed up to the club. This is a couple of years back. So we showed up to the club later in the afternoon, teed off at about 3:45, 4 o'clock, and played into the evening. We were staying at the golf hotel right on property there. We got done with golf right as the, I guess, 8 o'clock turned. And as you well know, in the middle of the summer there, it's light until 10:45, 10:30, 10:45. We went into the hotel, we checked into our room, we got settled, we took a shower, we went down and we ate just an amazing dinner that they served there. And then we got done with dinner and I turned to my son, Cal, and I said, well, what do you want to do now? We can go up to the room, we can get off our feet, because this is after a 36-hole day. Prior to that, we played somewhere down south. And he said, well, it's still daylight. Let's go practice. Let's get out a big putting green. And we just had the greatest short game contest, chipping and putting until the sun went down. And we got done at probably 10:45 as there was no light left to use. And we went inside and we played a game of chess inside the hotel there. So for that experience and also the amazing quality of the golf course is just, in my opinion, so underrated. I would repeat that afternoon, evening, day of golf every day of my life if I could. Second to that, not second to that because that's ordering them, that wouldn't be appropriate, would be the day that I shared in 2013 with a couple of clients of mine and Jordan Spieth, where we played Pine Valley in the morning and the second night at Augusta National that afternoon.
What?
Clearly borrowing someone's private jet at that point to get from New Jersey down to Augusta.
Is.
Yes, we are. Two golf courses in one day. Another top experience and a golf course that I'm fond of playing was the moment that I shared with Jordan. I've only watched him win once, being on property. I should say being on property, present when he won once, and that was at Birkdale in 2017. I was on property and I rode that roller coaster with him, as many in the golf world will remember, and rode with him the Jordan Spieth experience, as it's been coined. And for as memorable as that was, and as amazing as that golf course is, it's a golf course that I could go back and play it each and every day as well. And then when I play it, bringing back those fond memories of what I witnessed and also personally experienced is pretty special. And then the last one I would bring to mind is Shinnecock Hills. I had a client who I taught from. I taught golf to this beautiful lady from probably her 72nd year into her 85th year. And she was a member at Shinnecock, and she would every summer invite my family and I up to the Long Island coast, Southampton, to play Shinnecock. And it was just a short number of times that we got to take her up on that opportunity. And those times with a very fond friend who has since passed are fond in my memory. And again, you're talking about one of the most amazing golf courses in the world, with a dear friend, a client, and a mentor of mine. So golf for me is, yes, it's about the golf course. It's just as much about the people you share that experience with, and it's just as much, therefore, about the memories that come from that. Yes, it's a sport that at one point in time I was so hell-bent on getting really good at, and it offered me very little, let's say, joy and pleasure when that's my reason for playing and participating. And since it's been such an amazing gift of a sport, given the places it's taken me to and the people that I've shared those experiences with. So thanks for asking the question.
Sorry, you're not getting away with not blazing past the fact that you played Pine Valley and Augusta in the same day. That is incredible.
It was incredible. Yeah, we didn't realize it was going to happen until we got done. No, I think so. We left Dallas. We'll call it Sunday evening, and we flew up to New Jersey. I can't remember the name of the private airport the airport that we flew into.
I would know it.
Yeah, and then we got to the grounds at Pine Valley. The member who was a client of mine has a house, one of the few houses on the grounds at Pine Valley, and we stayed there overnight. We got up, we were the first tee time out. And given that we were the first tee time out, we didn't realize that we were going to get done and have lunch and have enough time to get down to the town of Augusta, to the city of Augusta, and play the second 9. And we got done early enough, and we got to the plane, and we're en route. And he said, "You know what? We may be able to do something on the grounds when we get there. You got 2 choices." He said, "We can either play the par 3 course, or we can head out on 10 and play the second 9." And Jordan and I looked at each other, and we couldn't say the second 9 soon enough. And so, yeah, that was our. I think it was like October 16th, 2013. His first time, and clearly my first time, and only time I've played there.
Amazing. What a cool experience. Well, thank you very much, Cameron. That's been a lot of fun and a lot of really impressive insight. You've obviously thought about your processes a lot over your time and developed a teaching method that is so aware of what's going on within the people that you're teaching. It's quite impressive.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
And I'm guessing that's where your success has come from. So well done.
Thank you very much.